For those of you that don't know me, I'm Lawrence Rock. I'm the director of Carmel International Film Festival. What I wanted to do was start a film festival by filmmakers for filmmakers. And as a director, I couldn't be more proud to see you three guys sitting here, two that are a part of our community that are incredibly important. I'm not going to give the location out, but you're here in Carmel doing the world's best scores. And it's like, it's wild. We have an artistic community here. If anybody wants to move to Carmel and make movies, come play with us. We got some people.
384 8th Avenue.
Yeah. You know, we know that you haven't been in Carmel that long because you just said a street address, and we don't have street addresses. I got you, brother. And then Graham Yost. I mean, what can I say? I was watching a TV show named Justified when I was casting my own movie, and I got the dream actor, Walton Goggins, and I cast him because I saw your show, and I'm a fan of everything you've ever done. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. Silo's a top show. Sneaky Pete, you guys are just really doing incredible things. But I do want to talk about our fourth star of the panel, Adrian Clark. He doesn't want to hear it. No, I want to tell you who this guy is. Adrian works for Chris DeFaria, who's a former VP of animation at DreamWorks. His father, Walt DeFaria, was a director here at this theater. That company is called Chronicle. So he's searching for product for that company. He's assisting them in putting together their slate. And he's also the UCLA valedictorian for the film and television department. So out of a lot of people. So Adrian, I want you to sit down. I want you to ask the first question, get these guys going, and let's get into it, right? And you guys prepare your questions. Let's have some fun. You guys, that microphone, you just share that. We're a low budget operation, so, you know. And I think it's on. Let me roll that over. Let me see the green light. Yeah, there we go. Adrian?
Okay, I think a big question in the room is this is the first time we have had our speed reunion in a long, long time. So Graham, Speed has become iconic in part because of its perfect marriage of script, pacing, and score, something that you and Mark obviously worked on together. Can you take us through that collaboration?
I don't think I met you until years after Speed came out. I mean,
that's the honest answer.
This
That's
is-
a great
this is
answer.
Hollywood, and in the divination in Hollywood, writers get television and directors get features. So I had very little contact with the actual making of the film. But then we got together, and I'll just be honest, we just totally geeked out over prog rock. Like, we are huge Genesis and King Crimson fans. Mark produced an album by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mark's the man.
And so that's mostly what we haven't seen each other in about 16 years. And the first thing we started talking about was Steve Hackett, the guitarist of Genesis back then. So that's, but in terms of the movie, I remember seeing it the first time at the little theater on the Fox lot and just being amazed right from the jump at how good the score was. And then when it got to what I consider to be, honestly, in many ways, the real climax of the film is right before the bus blows up and they slide out from underneath the bus and they're going through all those traffic-y things and they're embracing, and the surge in that score was like, okay, just roll the credits and go. But no, we got another 20 minutes because another crash and another form of public transportation. But then we worked together again on an HBO thing called From the Earth to the Moon, and I wrote an episode about the fire in Apollo 1, and Mark did a brilliant job scoring that.
Yeah, and when I did Speed, it was Michael Kamen had the job. I don't know if you guys remember Michael Kamen, but he was an amazing composer, and he had the job, and it wasn't working out. So they asked me to. Well, actually, Jan, the director, asked me to do the movie. The studio did not want me to do the movie because they thought I was a nobody, which I was. And so I was kept away from everybody, and I wasn't allowed to speak to anybody about it or show anything to anybody. So I didn't see Graham or anybody, really, until the head of production, I can't remember his name. Tom Jacobson, exactly. Called me up and he said, I'll be at your studio at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning and I want to hear your score. And yeah, yeah. A couple of packs of cigarettes later, and anyway, but he liked it, and everything was fine. And then after that, the movie came out and did really well, and it's really been fun because it's still fun to see it. And I showed it to my daughter when she was about 15. She's 24 now, but I showed it to her, and it was really fun to watch it again and see. It just goes, it's so much fun, that movie. It just keeps going, and it was fun to score too. So there you go.
Okay, so this next one is for Mark, obviously. And Mark, obviously, your entire career has been built on the livelihood of independent television and filmmaking and acting. And so I wanted to know, obviously, since being independent sometimes, most of the time, means a limited amount of resources. What would you say has been your project that you're most proud of that you have made with the most limited amount of resources?
Oh, that's a good question. I love making art within limits. It tends to be something that excites me. I've also realized that in order to be an independent storyteller consistently and tell the kinds of stories you want to tell, it just means you're necessarily going to be working with limits. I just sort of lean into that, you know? And my brother and I have a company together, and we've been making things since we were little. And the best lesson I ever learned was, we tried for years through our teens and our 20s to make movies that we thought would impress people, that looked and felt like the Coen brothers, or like, oh, here's my version of Speed, which I saw in the movie theater when I was 16 and blew my mind open, by the way. I saw it the night of the O.J. Simpson chase while it was happening. I left the O.J. Simpson chase and went to the theater to watch the O.J. Simpson. It was incredible. And was so inspired by that fourth act you wrote in that movie. Holy, that was the coolest thing in the world. Like, those of you who are filmmakers and know that, like, the movie, it ends when they finally get off the bus, and then it doesn't. Just the coolest. But the best lesson I learned is that when my brother and I were in our mid 20s, we were struggling. We ran an editing business so that we could sort of fund our own projects. We were losing all of that money because nothing we were making was good. And then we eventually shot this little $3 movie in our kitchen on our parents' one chip mini DV camera with the onboard microphone, no lighting. I was acting, my brother was directing me, and we improvised this little story. And that was our first movie that got into the Sundance Film Festival. And that stamped on my ass. This is how we're gonna have to do things. And there was also something about the way that the audiences received that. There was just an inherent humility and lack of hubris about it that made people want to lean into it and want to enjoy it. And like, I so appreciate what you guys are able to do with these big movies, but I just don't really feel comfortable there and don't know how to do it. So yeah, the thing I'm most proud of that I've made on that, that's really that's really hard to say. The The Puffy Chair was our first feature film that we made in 2005, and it was my girlfriend at the time, now my wife Katie, who's sitting here in the audience, and my brother, and we made it with a group of like 8 people, and we made it for about $10,000, and it was all of us leaning into what we thought we could be as artists, not knowing if we could do it. That's a very special feeling of like, I don't know if I have this, and I hope that we are greater than the sum of our parts. So I'll never really achieve that feeling again. So I think that one was really special.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I know uh, all of you guys on the panel span decades in the business. I wanted to kind of lean a little bit more into producing now that we're kind of in this producing panel. So how has producing changed from the '90s, the studio era, the speeds, the Con Airs, to now today's landscape of Justified, Silo, Somebody Somewhere? What does that look like? If maybe we can start in the middle and bridge our way out.
One thing about the business that we're in is that since I really got started late '80s, I was working for Nickelodeon on one of their first scripted shows. And so that's quite some time ago, but it's always been changing. I remember in the 90s, there was this whole thing, and I never had anyone explain it to me, called FinCin, right? It was this big thing, like financing and syndication and stuff, and it's going to destroy the business or it's going to make it great. And I still don't know what it was, but that was the big thing at the time. And then with doing like Earth to the Moon, that was HBO getting into narrative, and and then the next thing they did was Sopranos, and that changed their whole model. So it's always been changing. I would say that the big changes of the last 10 years have been truly seismic, and going to streaming and what that's meant not only for television but also um, for movies as well. And one of the things Mark and I were talking about is I would get asked on Justified, how are the ratings? And I would say the only rating that matters is, can we do another season? And similarly on Silo, it's kind of that way. But on a show like Silo, we have to sort of plan out years in advance because the production is very complicated. And so I have no idea how many people see that, and they will never release those figures. And nor should they. It's their business. They don't have to. There's no sort of ratings disclosure law. Either you subscribe or you don't. You watch it or you don't. But at the same time, the resources that can be given are so much bigger. We on Justified, we were spending maybe $3 million an episode by the end, maybe a little more. Silo is just factors beyond that, and it's nice to get those resources, but it's like I don't know why they're doing this, and there is that fear that one morning Tim Cook's going to wake up and go, yeah, we tried it. I don't want to be in TV anymore. Oh, okay. Thank God that was actually his idea to get into it. So it's just there. I don't think there's any way to really gauge where it's going. I do know that after the strikes, well, there was a huge, so much request for product, for content during COVID, and then after that, and then the strikes, and it's just shrunk right down. Is it going to expand again? No idea.
The question I get all the time is AI going to destroy composing music? And no, it's not going to. It's a tool, and it will get in the way, but it will also be something that'll be an advantage. Like, remember sampling things was the big deal, and it's going to destroy orchestras. They'll never have an orchestra anymore. They won't record scores with orchestra. They do. I do all the time. No, you can't replace it. You can't replace people. You just can't. But um, everything is done for less money in my world than it was in the 90s. The gates were open in the 90s. I mean, the money was ridiculous. And now, luckily for me, I have a franchise with Moana, but normally what the phone call is we have a project for you. It doesn't have a big budget. That's almost always what I hear. So, but it's been great because you never know when something's going to hit, and this is hit for me. And Carmel, I built my studio in Carmel, I think 17 years ago. I think I had just done training day, and I didn't have any work, and I didn't think anybody was going to hire me. And you just don't know where things are going to go. I found a great person here named Marlon, who's here somewhere. Where's Marlon? Where are you, Marlon?
Where's Mark? There he is. You guys, this guy's incredible. He's a good friend of mine. I meet with him on Ocean Avenue for coffee. Humble, incredible.
So, this is an example of someone who came. I was looking for someone to be an assistant, and Marlon came along, and he had just graduated and really didn't know where he was going to go. And he's been with me for how long, Marlon? 15 years? Lots of movies. He's learned a million things. Disney wants to hire him away, and it's just like a crazy thing. But you never know what's going to happen, you guys. So, you want to stay with what you're dreaming of. People say follow your heart, and it sounds so cliche, but it's so true because you just don't know when things are going to change. And honestly, if I wouldn't have found Marlon, I probably wouldn't have been doing what I'm doing because the technology in film scoring, it's insane with what we have to go through. And I'm sure it's the same with everybody. So it's been really helpful to have someone like that and be able to churn out these movies up in Carmel, living in this amazing environment that we're in. So.
And then, Mark, I have a really quick question
Yeah.
that will piggyback on that one, about how producing has changed from your start to now. What philosophies, in addition, do you think you swear by on a smaller scale that you think studios could also benefit from?
Philosophically, well, I read Kierkegaard every morning now. Yeah, it's hard to have philosophies. I try to be malleable and I try to have grace. I think that when you enter a mindset of scarcity, which we're talking about here in our business, is a little bit of the scarcity mindset and there's a little bit of the fear mindset, right? They're not making as many things. When they're making them, the budgets are a little lower, and even when they're making those, the stuff tends to be a little bit homogenized so that they hope it hits in the way that last year's show hits, right? So for me, I try to center myself and try to focus on what are the beautiful possibilities of this moment that we're in right now. And when I think about that, I think about the democratization of the technology, which is incredible, which means that, anybody, some kid somewhere, 14 years old, or some retiree who's never picked up a camera at 72 years old can make the greatest film that we've ever seen for very, very little money. Beautiful. Okay. Now the distribution mechanisms are not quite there in place, so we're going to have to learn how to be a little bit more aggressive and have a little bit more ingenuity about how we take these movies out. Okay, that's fine. What's like another beautiful thing that's happening right now? Like I think about television has had this big boom, as we discussed. The streamers came in, and we saw HBO, and we saw Apple come in, we saw Netflix come in, and now they're trimming down again, right? But we've proven that there are a lot of people who love this form, and they really want to go see 8 intelligent hours of television, or 4 intelligent hours of comedic television. And here's the good news. While they keep telling us that, well, we need a murder in the first 30 seconds or else, it's just short attention spans are not going to work. And they are right to a certain degree about that. Like, three of the biggest shows of the last 5 years are Fleabag, No Stars, small budget, out of England, Adolescence, a painful story with school shooting at the center of it with No Stars. And, you've got more and more just examples of how these things that are seemingly outlier art are cutting through. And because of the democratization of technology, you have the ability to make those more cheaply. So philosophically, what I really want people to do, because this is just the kind of artist that I am, I tend to have this belief system that you should get the best group of people together that you can and accept the mystery of why this is going to be great or why this is not going to be great, and go make things and light out. And if you follow that philosophy, which I have done with my company, we make these low budget TV shows like Room 104, new stories every night, all set in a hotel room. I can shoot them successfully for 2.5 days. I can give people their first shot at writing and directing and acting. They've never had it before. It can have relatively low viewership on HBO because I didn't pressure them to spend billboards and ads, and just let us be a show that can stay on the air. And it was a wildly successful show, financially, spiritually, storytelling wise, that didn't have that many viewers. We should be focusing on these little corners of the sandbox that I think have the ability to really light up our culture in unexpected ways. And I think about, again, what adolescence really did last year for all of us and how we talked about that. So that's the kind of things that I'm trying to focus on. I'm trying to be positive, and I think we are in a really cool moment with TV where if you look back at the 90s in independent film, for those of you who are around or have read about it, all these movies were coming up. They'd go to Sundance and everyone's like, where are they coming from? And who's going to buy these things and who's going to put them out? There was this big surge of art with no infrastructure. And an entire infrastructure ended up building around it because Sex Lies and Videotape was so exciting because here comes Spike Lee. And so it was literally like we shot these things out into the ocean and then a city sprung up around them. And I think we have a chance to do that in television right now. I think we can make really cheap, interesting TV that pushes the boundaries of our culture. And I think that if we build it, that infrastructure around it will come. It's a little painful right now because my friend Barrett and I have an independently made TV show. You saw a little clip of it there called The Long, Long Night, and and we almost feel like we're like 2 years too early. Like the executives don't quite know what to do with us because we try and sell it to the TV people. Like, well, if I buy this and I didn't develop it, you've negated my job. What do we do? But I think we've got a really cool moment right now. I'm not sure.
I think The Long Long Night is just a fantastic way of creating a series outside of the television box. You guys are doing an amazing job. I'm going to do one quick question for Graham, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. Graham, how do you handle your output? I mean, you've got Sneaky Pete, Slow Horses, you've got Silo. I know Silo's massive. That could kill a regular producer. You mentioned that you were in England recently and you're flying around. And I know your other show is Sneaky Pete shoots here domestically. How do you handle the output and how do you keep yourself together amongst so many different shows and so much responsibility?
Amphetamines get a really bad name, but um,
It's in here.
yeah, exactly. Caffeine, baby, straight. So one thing, Sneaky Pete actually, it's back on, it's on Netflix now, but that show actually wrapped some years ago, and I've only worked on the first two seasons, so it's one of those things where, you know, a show can have this extended life, like Justified. We wrapped that 10 years ago. The additional season was a couple years ago, but it exists forever now on a streaming platform. So people are catching up with that show all the time. And it says, they'll say, I've just caught up with this great new show called Justified. It's like fantastic. I'm glad you're enjoying it. But it's basically just Silo now. I'll tell you, the Slow Horses, I was involved for the first 5 seasons. And then a decision was made that I didn't agree with, had to do with not really supporting Will Smith, the British Will Smith, who won the Emmy the previous year. And so he left the show and I left the show. So we're not involved with season 6 on, but this season that's on now, our names are still on it. So it's basically just Silo now, but that's enough. And then trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And it's really there's times where there's a lot of juggling. And I was talking to a friend about how I'm trying to partner up on a lot of possibilities, projects that might go forward just in case they all go. And we kind of looked at each other and they never all go. They just don't.
Be okay.
Yeah, you're going to be fine. You think, what if I have to? Is there a direct flight from? It's like, settle down. That's not going to be your problem. Now there have been people where that problem existed, and Chuck Lorre, when he had all those shows on, and he went to have lunch with Norman Lear, who in the '70s had, I think, 4 or 5 of the top 10 shows on at once. And he said, Norman, what's the secret if you've got all these shows? I mean, he said, oh, there's no secret. You just run around like crazy. That's it. You just go nuts. So hopefully that's not going to happen.
Fantastic. I'd like to open it up to the audience. Who's got the first question? Adrian will run the mic over to you.
So for Mr. Mancina, Mancina, I'm so sorry. My name's Emily. I'm making a documentary, and I am working with a composer. And I told him in our first meeting, I'm really picky because when I was in high school, I thought for sure I would be a film music composer, and made some compositions. Do you have any advice? How do you feel about working with really picky directors? They have a strong idea. Do you love it when they come in with a strong idea of what the music should be? No, you.
No, sorry. Yeah. Well, I worked with Michael Bay. That was a picnic. Um, no, it's music is such a weird thing to talk about. You talk. I just went down last week down to Disney for this big powwow to talk about music, and we talk, and then I play something for them, and then everything changes because you know, and so it's difficult. I think it's hard for a filmmaker to communicate what they want because they want something and I want to get that for them. But at the same time, they hired me, and so I don't want to copy somebody else. If they come in with preconceived ideas, I'm kind of going, well, what am I doing? Am I just going to take what you want and do it? Because that's a kind of a different job, especially with movies that become very successful soundtracks. An example would be The Shawshank Redemption that Tom Newman did. And For a long time, every movie I saw, when I would go see the temp version of the movie before I would start the music, they would have Tom's score in there as a placeholder. And they're all going, "Oh yeah, this is great. This scene works great. Doesn't it work great?" I'm listening to it going, "Well, that's Tommy's music. Of course, it's great, but I'm not going to do that. That's somebody else's music. So it can be a curse. I think I do think the temp score is a wonderful thing. If, composers can run from the temp score and be worried about it and think that you want that. But it really is a way for the director to communicate to the composer, this is what I was thinking, something like this. Because it gives me the size you're talking about, what instruments you like or what you don't like. It gives me an idea of what we're talking about. The temp score is, when they do a movie, when they're writing the movie, they put music in the whole time to show it to the executives, to the director, whoever's working on it. It needs music. If they show it dry, it's pretty hard to watch. So they stick music in there, and what happens, of course, is the music they put in there, they get very used to and they get very married to it. And if the movie's testing really well with audiences before before the composer comes in, well, they don't want you to really change it that much, right? Like it when they use your music? No, that's worse. Way worse. Because it takes me if they put Twister in there, I'm back in that era of my life. It's weird. No, I'd rather have somebody else's music, but I try to look at it as a helper and not as a curse.
Beautiful.
Hi, this is for Graham. On a show like Silo, do you specialize in one aspect of it? Are you working with a team? How does that work?
Um, the term in the business has become, ever since Steve Bochco in the 80s, has become showrunner. And in that position, usually you're not often the creator, you're not always the creator of the show. In this case, I was. But it can kind of be what you really want to invest in. I've always maintained that the things I really like to be involved in are obviously the writing, and the casting and the editing. Um, when they come to me with questions about costuming, you should know this is as best dressed as I get. This is as forward fashion I can be, is to have a blue blazer. So, no, but everything else I'll weigh in on. With Silo, a lot of it is does that work in that world or not? And when we were starting the show, I would get 50 emails a day. After a few months, it would down to 5 or 10, because everyone got into what fit in the silo and what didn't. But I live here because I'm one of the blessed people on earth, right? And because we live here. And the show shoots in England, so we have at least a writer, maybe two, on set who are working with the directors and the actors, and then they'll send me a script saying these are the changes they'd like to make and all of that, and I would approve or noodle on them a little bit. Um, and that's kind of it. And it really gets intense when we get into post production. Especially, it's weird. On a show like this, it's really big. We're shooting for months and months and months, and then we get this really short period of post production because we've got to get it ready to go off for visual effects, and that takes another 6 months. So we're just turning cuts around day after day. Oh, boo hoo hoo! I get to watch episodes of television for a living. Yeah, okay.
It's a great show.
For Mark Duplass, two-part question. Um, how do you go about receiving content, new scripts to read? And the second part is, what thing are you looking for? Is there a thing you're looking for that helps you decide, yes, I want to take this project on?
It's a great question. Every company is different, and one of the first questions I was asked about is working within limits. And one of the limits I've had to accept is that the stuff that I make doesn't make a ton of money. So I can't fulfill my company with development executives who can make it their sole job to read things on the way in. So we actually had a really big sit down as a company, and we had to make a hard decision, but one we felt was right for us, which was that, we have many creatives at our company. Myself, my brother Mel Eslin, who runs our company, and we are IP generators. So we said, well, what we're going to do is, rather than spend time reading all these scripts that all these agents are jockeying for us to read and are going to be competitive for us to bid on and this and that, we're just going to spend time dreaming and come up with our own IP. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab partners that we feel like are right for that. And sometimes it means, we need a more established partner for this. Or in the case of, say, Room 104, it was designed to give people who were not getting access to the industry their first writing job, their first directing job, their first acting job. And we sort of proactively go out and grab those people. And as to the second part about, how do we decide on the kinds of things that we want to make? We try not to follow the trends too much, but I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say that, you know, um, sometimes I get insecure and I feel like, well, maybe we should make something in the horror space because that's what they want, right? And that happens, And the more you receive rejections, I find that subconsciously you start to pull yourself towards the homogeny of what is made because I'm a human being. I start to protect myself. So I try to have a healthy balance of things, and then I think that what's very, very important in what we've done, and I probably have left some quote unquote money on the table by doing this. And when I say money on the table, I mean cool projects, cool experiences. I've just subscribed to the John Cassavetes model from very, very early on, which is I was lucky enough to get in some roles as an actor that were lucrative. I'm going to take that money, have a nice little first look deal with HBO. They give us some money. I take all of that and use that as essentially VC funding for the company. And I write things and design things that I can make. The Long, Long Night that I made with Barrett, it was, we had a chance to a small window in order to make something. We designed it so most of it will be shot in a hotel room and on Zoom calls and this, and turn around and now we have 6 episodes of a television show for under $100,000. So we can't get hurt. It's all upside and all cool fun for us. And we can experiment. And I pay for everything. I very, very rarely go to outside financiers. And what I accept because of that is that I can't go make Silo because that's just not feasible for me. But I can make the cool version where everybody's in a motel room talking about that stuff, And like that's where I live and I'm kind of cool with it. Yeah.
And you guys make sure you check out The Long, Long Night tonight. We're playing an episode. Yeah, it's right after this. Barrett O'Brien's here. Barrett, hop on up and just say hi to everyone. There you go. Incredibly talented. Were you from Ashland, Oregon?
From New Orleans, but I live in Ashland right
Originally from New Orleans.
Barrett and I went to high school together.
There's some people here in town. Just for one moment, I want to tell a little aside. There's some people here that I believe used to work for your father or something in New Orleans.
Are you serious?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh,
There's
wow.
people that are connected to your family that are here.
Hi
It's the
guys.
folks- Yeah, the blue team.
You work for that asshole?
The Rodrigue. They made the Rodrigue movie, Blue.
Oh,
For
excellent.
the Blue
Yes,
Dog.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim Dotson. He runs a PBS station out there. So, anyways, we have 3 more questions. Then we have to wrap. We don't have these gentlemen forever. They've got to get back to work. Graham's got 12 more shows to do, and Mark's got 13 more scores. And, anyways, you over there, here, Adrian. I'm gonna have you run that.
I am curious what your creative appetites are like. I feel like you guys have all been entrenched in the business up to your necks for a couple of decades now. And I'm so curious like what your personal creative appetites are these days.
Well, I wrote a piece of music for the Bach Festival here, and that was kind of fun a couple of years ago. It was a guitar concerto. I'm a guitar player, and so any it's a 3. No, it's not. But the Bach Festival, they actually don't do only just Bach. They even do Zeppelin. Honestly. Yeah. But anyways, to answer your question, since I moved here, my whole thing has changed because when you're in Los Angeles, your feeling is that you want to get ahead, and the problem is that everybody wants to get ahead. So generally the vibe for me is everybody's kind of has a little knife out behind me, and they're all. And so when I moved here, it really opened up, and of course also I didn't have any work, so it opened up all right. But but it changed. And part of the reason it changed, I think, is what you're talking about. I opened up to, okay, what do you want to do creatively? Rather than, okay, they're going to pay me a bunch of money, I got to do it. I've been doing that forever. How about, you know, and I did something with Graham where there wasn't any money, and I've done lots of stuff without money, and it's gratifying actually because you're doing something cool and it's a different way to do it. And we've set up our studio here to kind of do that so that we can do things in house. We did a movie called The Snow Bear that's going to be shown tomorrow, right? I think. It's a little 10-minute thing. The director from a movie called Brother Bear that I did with Disney, and he drew this really beautiful little story. And Marlon and I wrote music and put it together and recorded it in my studio. I was telling these guys, we had an orchestra in my studio. My studio's not that big. So we had all the woodwinds in a kitchen and all of the string players in the main room, and it was crazy, but it sounded fantastic. And so we were able to do it all in-house and deliver it under budget, and it turned out really well. So, it's been really exciting to be here, and it's opened up a whole creative energy for me to do other things.
That's a good answer. Yeah, I'm of a certain age, which means I'm 66 now. I know. How many more? I know.
God, I'm glad I'm.
I got more gray than you do. But it's sort of how much more am I going to do? And I love doing it. I'll probably be writing until, the words no longer make sense. But hopefully that's not soon. There's a lot of things I want to do, but at the same time, I also just like working. I like being on a show. I like being in the mix. It's fun. And it's still fun. Now, it might not be fun 5 years from now. It could maybe not be fun 6 months from now. I don't know, but I'm going to keep doing it as long as they let me do it. So sometimes, for example, I'll pitch things at Apple and they'll say, no, it's period. We don't want to do that. And then they say, well, what about this book? We're interested in doing this book. And it's like, well, now I'm interested because if you like it, then it's got a good shot at being made.
That's a good point for people to know that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if they come to you and I'm lucky enough to be in that position. They came to me with Silo back at the beginning of my deal, and I'd read the books, and so I said, sure, I'd love to do that, and it's worked out great. Um, Slow Horses was something I sought, and they had it, and they let me work on that. So there are a lot of things I want to do, but as we were saying before, they're not all going to happen at once, you know. Unless hear about someone being checked into the garden pavilion at Chomp that matches my description, it was because I'm overworked. It could happen.
I would just say at this point, hi Katie, how are you? That's my wife. Uh, yeah. We don't have a marriage where we talk about these things, so we like to do these at Q&As as well. Yeah, yeah. She's like, I asked a question, now I have to listen to my fucking husband talk about, but I'm going to answer it. What I would say at this point, the thing that's become really exciting to me, as someone who still does live in Los Angeles and does feel the knife or the people looking over your shoulders to what the conversation is going to be. This is how much is enough, right? How much is enough? And I've climbed so many mountains. The first mountain was if I could just have a feature film at the Sundance Film Festival, then I'll be happy. And I got to the top of the mountain, I was like, I'm still depressed. Shit, what do we do? And so what I've started to realize is that everybody is just reaching up in hopes that someone will take their hand and lift them up to the next stage of their career. And I actually spent quite a bit of time doing that until I realized I'm in an incredible place. And while there are tons of people above me who I would love to help me out, it's just as good for the universe if I just look laterally, or maybe someone is right down there who's reaching their hand up and I can grab them and then we can do something together. So the creative collaborations with someone who I think is really talented but hasn't had their shot to direct yet. So I say, well, you know what? Let's design a little $100,000 movie. I'll pay for it. We'll write it together. You direct it. I'll kind of be there if you need some help. They usually don't. They're usually good to go. Those kinds of projects are really fulfilling, and I'm trying to. I guess someone asked earlier about philosophically if there's any philosophy. I'm trying to spend more time um, reaching laterally and down versus reaching up.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so it looks like we only have time for one last question.
Thank you. Um, my question's mostly for Graham and Mark Duplass. You guys both wear like a lot of hats kind of in your work, and specifically as producers, I'm just kind of wondering how you kind of balance, producing with your other roles and then kind of the more technical, logistical elements with the creative elements of that, kind of how you balance it all.
Well, for me, there's a theoretical answer to that, but the practical answer is a couple of things. One would be my involvement on The Americans, which is just because I knew Joe Weisberg. He had, our agents had teamed us up. He had an idea for a different spy show. He had actually been in the CIA and sold it to FX. They didn't go forward with it. And then I put him on a show, this thing on TNT called Falling Skies, just because I wanted him to get room experience because he was flat out the best new writer I'd ever read. And while we were doing that, he came up with the idea for The Americans, and he asked me to be a part of that. I didn't do anything for the success of that show, and I got my name on it for 6 years. It was the best job I ever had. All I had to do was read early drafts of scripts and see early cuts, and Connie and I got to go to the premiere. It was fantastic. Joe and Joel was his co-showrunner, would call me up once or twice a year for a little bit of advice that they did not need. Slow Horses was a little different. I was in the writer's room. We started a writer's room in London in the spring of 2019, and I was running the writer's room, and will because British writers are not they're not used to that. Writers' rooms. So that was my sort of thing for a while. And then eventually, well, by the end of that first go round, Will Smith, it was entirely his show. And so that's the sort of the producing side. But even with that, it was just giving notes on scripts and cuts and stuff like that. That's my kind of producing. Everything else is I'm actually really working on the show.
For me, it's I get a little I don't want to say selfish, but I think about what's going to keep me happy and healthy in this business and not burn out, you know? And so it's a combination of doing new things that stretch me, that I can grow, and at the same time continue to maximize on what I call like what I think my little superpowers are, you know, because I like to write and direct and act and produce, but I try to be honest with myself about where am I replaceable and where am I really, really useful, you know? And I've discovered that through the years, like I'm the person who can write a B minus first draft in a week that's really well paced, but has crappy dialogue and a couple of hacky set pieces. But if I give that off to someone, and they can really make it into a good movie. So like that's something I do. If you need a number 2 or 3 on the call sheet male to a female movie star who's number 1, and none of the male movie stars want to play number 2 or 3 to them, or work for the money that's lower because the female took all the money in the deal, I'm your guy. And it's great. I love it there. You know, I'm emotional support. I improvise with them to help shake things up a little. It's the best, you know. And so those are my places. But I also have to make sure that I'm growing as a person. And so that's where those collaborations that I was talking about earlier, where I make a little movie, and I want to make sure that that little movie doesn't feel the same as the movie I made last year. So I pick a new partner in it. It's part of why my brother and I sort of consciously uncoupled in our filmmaking duality so that we could get new energy in the things that we like to make. So I try to keep a balance of those things. And, I think a lot of people will identify with this. It's hard to avoid the grass is greener mentality, and I really have that. So showing up on the morning show where my burrito is ready for me every morning, and the coffee, and I have a nice half a trailer, and they take care of me, and I love it. And then I'm like, I miss when I was just like with Barrett and Katie hanging lights, and there was 8 of us. And then I go and do the little movie, and I'm like, yeah, I feel so young again. And then about 2 weeks in, I'm like, I miss my fucking burrito, man. So the ping ponging is healthy.
Everybody, I want to thank these 3 gentlemen for coming down. You're incredibly generous for spending a little bit of time with us and helping inspire some of these filmmakers. And what we really love is that we have you in our community, and you're an example that you don't have to live in Hollywood to have a career. You can live in your own community. We want to bring more filmmaking to this area, create production incentives, and at least use this area as a catalyst to keep filmmaking in California. We're going to lose a piece of our culture. So I'm going to embarrass you two, but you're cultural touchstones. We need to keep you guys around. So thank you so much. Mark, you're incredible, the stuff you do, because you actually care. You know, you're not just getting the big paychecks and running off and doing your thing in Bel Air. You're actually making... Hey, you know what? I know one.
Can't afford to live here.
And then we'll put you guys in our backyard there. We got a little tent. But thanks again, you guys. Give them another round of applause. Pleasure. Mark.